It is 11 a.m. here on Sunday. I'm meteorologist Robert Spetto. Let's talk about Hurricane Erin here. Now a Category 3 major hurricane, down from a Cat 5 yesterday. First Cat 5 in the month of August since Dean in 2007. How about that? This update, I'm going to try to answer some of those most frequently asked questions. We're going to break down this storm's forecast. No hype here, just kind of educate, inform, and you can make those decisions here as we monitor this storm. So right now, there's the latest advisory, 125 mile per hour winds, pressure up to 946 millibars. That means it has weakened a bit here since the 5 a.m. advisory. But the key thing right now, it's moving towards the northwest at a 13. And in the latest loop here on radar and satellite, I am seeing more of that northwesterly churn. And fingers crossed, because yesterday, I'm going to admit, I'm here with you. I've been watching this move towards the west thinking, can you move northwest already? And it has just been taking its sweet time. So we really are looking forward to that northwest churn. All the guidance continues to show that, but not just the guidance. Let's talk about the atmospheric dynamics and why we expect that. Plus, you can see right above me another storm that could be developing behind that. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Let's first talk about the core of this storm. And you can see the radar coming out of Puerto Rico. This does not mean that there's no rain north of these storm centers, just as far as the radar can see. And it's wobbling a little bit here. That's actually a trochoidal wobble. Basically, think if you kind of half load a washing machine that starts going boom, boom, back and forth. That's what these stronger storms can do sometimes, and they wobble around just a bit. So if you're seeing that, that's the reason why. But now it looks like that's less of a wobble, starting to turn more towards the north and west. But we also have these rain bands coming in across Puerto Rico, and we do have a couple flash flood warnings. We had a severe thunderstorm warnings overnight and again this morning. Due to these rain bands, which would continue to pull that inflow and that moisture across there. So there's still a lot of rain continuing for our friends here in Puerto Rico. If you're watching from there, let us know. Give us some reports about how it's like in your neighborhood. But take a look at where the warnings are right now. Tropical storm warnings up in place for the Turks and Caicos. Also some tropical storm watches as well. As the storm moves towards the west, it is strong. The wind field's starting to expand, so I'm not surprised to see those watches and warnings there. And I want to be surprised if that threat of tropical storm watches and warnings does extend out there towards the Bahamas as this moves towards the north and west. So let's talk about the potential impacts and where this is going for the east coast of the United States. Now, like I said, all guidance shows this staying offshore of Florida here. But as it does move towards the north, you can see the wind flow wrap around like that. That onshore breeze really is going to be piling up the waters along the eastern seaboard of Florida here, with that risk of increasing tides, beach erosion, even that threat of some tidal flooding out there. As far as the guidance, though, here's your spaghetti plots, just showing that consensus for the low-level center. Likely moving west of Bermuda and east of the Outer Banks, kind of threading that needle in where you would quote unquote want a storm to go. It's right in the middle there, and we're confident of that, not only based on the guidance but the overall dynamics in the atmosphere here. So let's say we had no models and I was just looking at a satellite picture. I would see the overall background flow. I would see the Bermuda high, a little bit of a break in it, and also we have this high pressure over the United States. So knowing these storms and how they work, they basically are like water. They're going to want to try to flow into the valleys, flow to the area of least resistance. A hurricane is not going to smash through the middle of a strong high pressure. So where you see the break is where this is going to want to go. And that's why all the meteorologists, despite what you're seeing and people commenting saying this is going to move west because that's where it's headed now, everybody's agreeing this will eventually turn towards the north and head into that break there. That's the same as if you were saying water is going to flow uphill. It's not. It's going to look for that break, and that's where it is. So let's talk about the impacts here that could be taking place along the eastern seaboard. And the big thing is waves. 7 feet to 8 feet breakers are possible here along the coast of Florida as that big swell comes off. You have to stay out of the water. Please, 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 because I know surfers are stoked about this, But this is going to be sketchy, friends, okay? We're going to be looking at some of these breakers with that powerful swell behind it. That's really going to have a lot of force with it. Dangerous, life-threatening rip currents. And the other issue is on the left side of this storm, we're going to be seeing a lot of subsidence. So the rain threat for Georgia, Florida, even South Carolina is actually down despite, these strong winds just offshore and all those waves. You're not really going to see a lot of rain. So it might not even seem that bad out there until you head into the ocean. Here's a look at the extent of the wind field. And as I mentioned earlier, it is all about that flow on the northern side of it, kind of pushing those waters on shore, and really that's going to be the big issue. So this is specifically for the First Coast. If you're watching from outside the First Coast is, well, basically where Europeans first settled, and Southeast Georgia, Northeast Florida, St. Augustine, the oldest city in the United States. The biggest issue here is going to be the high rip current risk, plus that surf 7 feet or greater with some of those breakers. We also have a spring tide. If you go outside, you look at the moon, it's a crescent. You can do a little forecasting yourself. You see that crescent moon, it's getting smaller. That means the tides, or at least the changes in the tides, are getting greater because the moon is positioning itself between us and the sun in the middle of the day. So those tides in the afternoon and the evening are naturally, every month, they're higher. But you combine that with the onshore wind, it could be backing up those bays and inlets, and especially up the St. Johns River. The water levels are already high there. Naturally, what comes with that is beach erosion too. We could be looking at some of those dunes kind of taking a little bit of hit during the periods of high tide. And this is actually a high tide for Jack's Beach specifically by Monday evening, Tuesday morning, and Tuesday evening. Tuesday evening, that 6 p.m. one, and Wednesday morning, 6:22. Those are the ones I'm a little bit, not worried, but definitely emphasizing for that chance of some of that beach erosion out there. All right, so that's what we have with Erin. I want to keep your attention here. Let's talk about the next area, because everybody's asking about this. It is still a low risk of development. We are still looking at that long range forecast here. There's still a lot of uncertainty. But with that said, I'm not gonna talk down to you here and say, well, we can't look at the models right now and everything. Let's just talk about what we have right now. And it really is going to track towards the west in a path a lot like Erin, meaning it's rounding the southern periphery of the Bermuda High. And as it heads out towards the Lesser Antilles, maybe it might head west, or it could find that break yet again. Now, I do want to be humbly honest with you. There is still a lot of uncertainty once it does get further towards the west there. And I don't think there's a forecaster on Earth that's going to be able to tell you accurately how strong or where exactly this could go. This is the GFS model, though. It is showing that more westerly track. It has that ridge kind of resetting in place, and it takes it out over Cuba. But the ECMWF actually shifts it towards the north, and the ensemble spread is all across that area. So I think that we have an increasing chance of a tropical system, but there's still a vast amount of uncertainty. But if you do see these model outlooks that show like a mega hurricane hitting Florida, it could just be the GFS in one particular run, and it's being cherry picked. I can train a first grader to cherry pick models and reshare it out, but the key thing is you got to study meteorology at least a little bit, and you can do that at home. If you're watching this video, you might be curious about meteorology and kind of understand why models show that and what the atmospheric dynamics are behind it as to what we're seeing out there. And that's the number one thing. So for today, though, we're going to continue to monitor Erin. It's a little too close for comfort for Puerto Rico, the Turks and Caicos, but we are expecting that turn towards the north. Still a major hurricane out here. It is going to have those side effect impacts up and down the eastern seaboard, being the big rip currents, as well as some dangerous wave action. So make sure you're staying smart with this. That's my biggest request. If you want more information, check out firstcoastnews.com/Hurricane Central, and I hope you're staying safe out there, friends.